Welcome to Cheaper Than Therapy, a podcast that journeys into conversations that demystify, destigmatize, and desensitize what goes on both inside the therapy room and in daily life.
I'm Vanessa Bennett.
And I'm Danae Logan.
And we are seekers, soul sisters, and holders of sacred space. Every week, we sit down for soul-provoking conversations with fellow seekers, thought leaders, change makers, and even real people during live coaching sessions as they navigate the hard work it takes to be human.
This is Cheaper Than Therapy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cheaper Than Therapy. So today we're talking to Alana, and Alana wrote us in something that I don't think we've necessarily talked about yet on the podcast, which is, and it's a little vague, so I'm going to let you kind of take us deeper, but it sounds a little bit like it's this question or struggle around social media, how it shows up, how it affects your relationships, whether it be maybe a romantic relationship, how it kind of spreads out your time and your attention. And it sounds like you're feeling a bit like the cons are outweighing the pros when it comes to the effect on relationships. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's definitely spot on. So I'll jump in and share a bit more of what I'm thinking or feeling. So something the last few years that I've just been kind of dissecting and dismantling myself has been how media affects me in my relationship with it. I personally decided to stop using social media for personal reasons, but I see the potent in power when it comes to business. So I still use it for business, but I don't follow any friends or family. I prefer to have relationships in real life. So connect with someone over the phone, a video chat, or face to face. And I've noticed that my relationships have gotten they've gotten deeper and more authentic. And I've noticed too that when I was using social media for personal reasons, it was as if my front door was always open and I felt a bit depleted and obligated to answer people back. And people felt like it was kind of like an open telephone line to always reach out. And it was a weird thing where I didn't really enjoy it. So cutting it out, I've actually seen which relationships made it through and which relationships on the other end, people wanted to continue pursuing me like in a direct manner. Then for myself as well, where I wanted to invest my time and like my relationship with my mother, my brother has gotten deeper. And then romantically as well, I used to use social media kind of like a dating app. You have this kind of vitrine of yourself that you're presenting. And I would flirt a lot on it. I would get a lot of attention. Of course, felt good, but I had and have this desire to have one partnership for life. And I just always thought that these two worlds would clash and they don't really make sense. So I made the decision, let me start making changes now in my life if I do want that. And recently I'm in a new relationship, which is really great and happy and healthy, the healthiest I've had. And we've been together for like almost 5 months. And he's still very active on social media. And I have it's like distasteful for me. And then the whole conversation of like having your ex-partners on there, like your ex-girlfriends, for me, just weird, like to continue seeing their things on a daily basis, them seeing yours. Then it's the whole conversation of like, do they post a picture of you in the new relationship? If they don't, what does that mean? I just, honestly, I don't like it. I think it is messy and it's confusing. And I think it's helpful if one is going to use it personally to have really strict boundaries. Or I think to myself, if I ever do get back on for personal, I'll keep it private and actually only have my friends and family that I engage with on a daily basis. Because it's weird. It's like people knew my life, what I was doing without me directly telling them. Right. And I would kind of get off on showing it. Like, look at all the places I'm traveling to. It's strange. It's strange, and I just think really unhealthy for the relationship that I see myself having with myself, with friends, family, and then more so romantically, because I would get attention from like ex-partners too, and I'm like, oh, they're still interested, you know?
Yeah. So this new partner, before I say
yes.
he, assume, what's his take on how you feel about social media?
He actually completely agrees, and he's tried deleting it in the past a few times. He said he wants to. He doesn't see it really integrating with a healthy and happy life. He admits that he's addicted, but he processes things differently than I do. I'm pretty, I react quick and I make a decision, I stick with it. I guess we could say this is like the New York side of me.
Mm-hmm. I was like, I get
And
that. I
he's
can feel
just
it.
yeah. And his temperament is just slower, and he kind of has to, I mean, this is why it's kind of a little bit of a yin and yang nice balance, because I think about things longer now because he kind of
Mm.
challenges me to reflect on it more.
Like you
So
just
I
slow
mean,
down.
yeah, exactly. So that's good. But he agrees with it, and he says, like, I'm addicted to it. And said, I think these things take time, but I agree with you. I don't really see how it's like helpful.
Mm.
I'm so glad you're bringing this conversation in, because this is something that's been coming up a lot with clients lately. Just this, not only what social media stirs up in all of us, the way that we're sort of feeling the response in our bodies and our psyche, but also what it's doing to our partnerships when it feels like my partner is really sort of distracted or
Mhm.
checking out exes or all of the things. And I don't know, it's not, I'm really curious to hear your take on this, V, because I feel like you and your partner have very
I love
different
it.
energetics around the way that you use it. But I feel like you said something just from the jump that feels really potent to me, which is, with any sort of addictive pattern, I think the desire to put it down needs to come from an authentic place within me, and that we each have our own process around it. I think you said it beautifully, right? And so it sounds like he's in process with it. It sounds like he's sort of like in that dance of negotiating, like how and when I'm ready to put this down. And I think that's a little bit of like, well, I got to let him ride that process out and get there when he gets
True.
there.
Mhm.
But I'm
Yeah.
curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough. It's I'm not gonna say it's not. I have my partner is very active on social media, and that's basically his entire business and platform has come from social media. And it can be a little frustrating, a lot of frustrating, when I feel like he's very distracted, and it's this constant negotiation, I think, in my head between like, this is work and put your fucking phone down, right? Like it's this back and forth in me internally always. And we've had a few conversations about it, and I've asked him to establish different boundaries in this way or that way, and he's respected them while he's remembered them, and then he's forgotten, and I've had to remind him again. But I think it's like a dance, and I don't know that it's like I don't know that I can ever make him look at it, nor do I necessarily want to make him look at it the way that I look at it. But it's more about just continuing to share with him, this is what makes me uncomfortable. This is, when you do this versus this is how I feel or I see it. And then allowing him to adjust accordingly. I mean, that's just how we've navigated in our relationship. I don't know if that's helpful, but it's a struggle. I'm not going to say that it's not. It is for me daily, for sure.
Yeah, and I think you guys are spot on with kind of, or at least the way I'm digesting it is respecting his own exploration and growth and path. And this is where I am trying to be aware to not control, because we think differently. Everyone has their own path, and this is a learning experience as well for him. So it's respecting someone else's growth rather than being like, why don't you see it right now, make action? Which I'm telling myself, chill, okay, chill. You mentioned it, you brought it in a nice manner, but it's kind of stuff that I'm just like, are you just think like, is that helpful for a relationship? Like following an ex-girlfriend, liking her photos all still, or like even besides the jealous romantic side that could be driving a lot of this, it's even like, rather than your mom staying up to date with what you're doing because of social media, why don't you like send her photos directly? It just makes relationships more intimate.
Yeah. I kind of want to stay there for a second, only because I do feel like that's something that comes up. Not only like the exes that you're following and liking, but like I feel like I hear clients talk about like liking other attractive women, or like, like what are they called, V? For fans page? What
Fans?
I'm such an old lady.
She's the old lady to my millennial.
I'm like, what are those called, V?
What are those young whippersnappers doing to make money these days?
Exactly. But that's something that I hear come up a lot too. And I guess I wonder, Alana, how you are sort of reconciling that relationship with, you're following an ex and you like her picture or whatever, and like what that stirs up within you when are you seeing that? Do you notice it? Like, how does that show up?
Yeah. So I go looking, which I admit to, and I don't like, because it feels like it's snooping, but then it almost doesn't, because it's on a public
Like
open
platform.
platform, like everyone can see. So it's not
Yeah.
like I'm reading your journal, but then I do express like very calmly that this makes me feel uncomfortable because I feel blah 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 blah. And then I dive in, like, I'm not telling you what to do, but let's talk about it. How do you feel? What do you think is appropriate or not? Let's negotiate. And then I do share that I don't really see my future like with one partnership, and I would like to have children one day. Then like my partner's on the couch like scrolling through ex-girlfriend's posts, like that to me just seems weird and doesn't seem like how I want to spend my time in a relationship. But and then it also goes to like, why do you care? Like there was then even a response back like, well, I want her to know that there's no like hard feelings between us anymore. I'm like, so you follow her? Like, why don't you, if you see her like in town, you say, or like you meet up for a coffee, you like say this, and then like have a great life. Like,
Mhm.
happy to see you're okay. Like, what is that? Since a follow and a like that sounds it feels artificial, which is just what I hate about social media. It's very artificial.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's I honestly hate it, but it's so helpful for
I know.
work.
It's the love
Yeah.
hate.
Something too that I've noticed, like in at least with therapists, maybe I was reading something, and I do think with modern relationships, it is helpful to have it be part of the conversation. Like, what is our relationship with social media
Mhm.
individually, then as a couple? Like, for example, if
Mhm.
you want to post a picture of me, I would like you to ask me rather than
Mhm.
just post it. Because, like, this is a public thing. People can see what my life is doing. I choose to have a private one. So people only know what I'm doing if I tell them directly, and I do
Mhm.
that on purpose.
Mhm.
So I think all of these are conversations that have to be had.
I love that. I mean, I love the idea of having that kind of conversation up front, right? I mean, it's a part of all of our worlds now. And each person should be understanding of how the other person expects to show up or not show up in that world, and then respect the other person's wishes. I think that's a great conversation to have. I mean, the thing about the jealousy, I guess for me, it's tough because I mean, Danae knows I have like very aggravating views on jealousy, I think to many people, because I'm like almost like ridiculously unjealous. But I guess the question for me is more around, so you have the conversation with him and you do approach it more like, this makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel X, Y, and Z. And then his response to you is what?
I mean, he's pretty good. So like he'll think, well, we've been having this conversation for the last few weeks. So after the first one, he came back a few days later and he was like, I agree with you, and I took
Mhm.
this action.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was like, okay, you took this action, but like I don't want you to take this action just for me, because then I don't want you to have resentment or feel like I'm
Okay.
controlling. And he said, no, I actually like thought about it and I agree with you.
Okay.
I don't think it's right. So we had just a new one last night around the same kind of topic, but a different action. And he was kind of like, I mean, he responded back in a way that was felt a bit immature. And I said, well, like, okay, think about the words you're using right now because this is not productive then.
Mm.
And then he kind of came back this morning and was like, okay, like I'm going to think about it. I mean, he is pretty responsive on when he comes back, but it's a little bit of a frustration because he's older than I am and I should not be bringing in an age, but I do. And I'm like, why haven't you learned this lesson already?
Okay. So we're going back to the original conversation. Go ahead, Danae.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, I feel like this becomes one, and listen, I just want to name what I like. I feel you. Like, it is so like tempting to creep in and be like, and just exactly did they like that picture? Like, I know I shouldn't look, but I'm gonna look like so human and right. Um, it's control, right? Let's call a
100%.
thing. It's
I
control. It's
agree.
attempting to like get in there and control this other human. And I was listening to Ram Dass on a talk the other day, and I wish I could quote him precisely because it was so like, oh, gut punch. But no matter what, the human psyche will resist any attempts we make to control another person. So he might say, yes, I hear you 100%. I'm not going to do it again. And just like you said, it will show up in another way, because this is like what will happen when we attempt to control another person. What I think is more useful for us to do is bring the focus inward and say, okay, so what is the narrative that happens inside of me when I see him liking ex-girlfriend's picture? What is the story I tell myself about the meaning What is the, like all the narratives that like what should and shouldn't happen and why, and if it does, what that could lead to, like all the story that surrounds it. And can I ask myself what else could be true? Can I ask myself, like, obviously I'm the woman he wants to be with now. If he were to change that in any way, shape, or form at some point, there would be actually nothing I could do to control that. But it's the illusion of control that we want to sort of grasp onto. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. Completely. And control is definitely an issue, or like a hiccup or something that I've been aware of, and I'm gonna have to, I think, continue being aware of, because I think it's like pretty deep rooted in my being.
Well, and I think it's important, exactly what Danae is saying, right? When we get into that space of like, I can feel it in my body because I tend to lean into control as well as I mean, it's a very clear defense, but it's when I get into that space internally, I do try to do the same thing that Danae is saying, like, what's going on for me internally? What's the narrative that I'm telling myself internally, right? Like all these questions that Danae was saying, what else can be true, right? And it's still important, obviously, to communicate with him when something is activating you and stirring you up. But it's less about like, we'll just use the liking the ex-girlfriend as an example. It's less about like, I see that you liked her post, like, why is that? What is that about? This is why I don't like it. This is what makes me uncomfortable. And rather letting him in on the vulnerability of, what did you discover when you were actually sitting with yourself for a moment and you were questioning what was coming up for you?
I love that.
So what did you discover in your internal exploration when you were sitting with your activation? What was the story you were telling yourself? What else could be true? What was the old narrative for you from childhood that was coming up? Was it the feeling of not being worthy? Was it the feeling that he is more interested in this person than you, that he might leave you for this person, that you're going to end up in a relationship with somebody who's going to be more concerned about social media than you? That's the shit you share.
Totally. Well,
that's not the
I
control,
have shared,
right?
I have shared that I feel unworthy or not prioritized, or I'm not going to be as important to you as this person was.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I completely have, which is cool and nice to share that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, that's what we come back to.
I think that's so powerful, V, because that naming that is the difference between emotional intimacy versus like, you're responsible for my self-soothing, right? Which I think,
and I need you to stop doing this thing.
Yeah. Right? I think a lot of times what we confuse is like my needs being met in relationships is some of our work around our own self-soothing. And that doesn't mean I don't bring my partner into the truth of my process and what's happening for me. It's just, I don't make you responsible for attending to my internal world.
And by the way, it doesn't mean you don't have the boundary. Like, if after all of that work and after all of that introspective, the sitting with yourself and everything, you really still feel truly in your gut that, like, again, just to keep using this one example, like, I really don't like that you follow this ex, period. And that is really what your boundary is. Then it's still okay for you to have that boundary, but you're putting it out there for him to sit with and digest on his own, versus you need to do this thing or don't do this thing, which doesn't sound like that's exactly what you're saying. Right. But I think that can be the tricky thing, is it's like what Danae said, you're responsible for this thing. This is how I feel, fix it, versus like, here's what's coming up for me. I want to share this with you. I want you to come in on this journey with me. And then that's either going to, I don't know if propel is the right word, because it still feels like it's got a forceful kind of hand in it, but it's either going to propel him to consider this, how you react to it, how it, affects you, and he's going to take action in kind, or it's not. And either way, that's information for you, right? About how he's going to show up and meet you, I guess, in that process.
Yeah. There's something about speaking to it is like, I don't want you to do whatever the relationship is with this ex as a boundary that feels a little bit in the realm of like an expectation that I feel like, okay, but then if that is not met, then I am resentful, right? Then I am in the space of anger, which is a little bit different to me than I express how this makes me feel. I show up in a vulnerable way, and this person shows me a lot of their capacity to to tune in to how things feel for me based on their response. Like there's something that just like
Let
something
them have their own response, and then that response will be the information for you.
yeah, information for you versus like, this is the boundary I'm setting. Like, I just feel like sometimes then if that person steps over that boundary, then I have a decision to make because I've set a boundary, right? Like boundaries mean I
but
gotta
sometimes
follow
you need
through.
that. No, I mean, sometimes if you have, let's say you have the conversation 5 times. Okay, just as an example, and you keep putting it out there and you don't set that boundary, but you do say, this is what's coming up and you're vulnerable and whatever. And they're not doing the thing that in the back of your mind, you actually really want them to do. And that really is in your gut a boundary, but you're just not expressing it because you don't want to be controlling. I'm saying this from somebody who has a tendency to be controlling. But at the end of the day, you actually do have to get real with yourself. And if that really is a boundary, then like you got to hold yourself to it. You know?
Totally. Just know that a boundary means this is the hill I'm willing to die on.
Yeah, I have to have a consequence.
Then that means consequence. Otherwise,
100%.
you're just threatening and controlling, and that is different than a boundary, right?
100%. Yeah. You have to uphold the consequence that you have established for a boundary for it to actually be a boundary. Otherwise, it's just something that you're using to control, or you're using to sit in your resentment, because sometimes we get really addicted to our resentment.
Yeah. And I think something too, so then throughout all this, I've been asking myself, so what is, where's my space to grow? And one of the large areas, aside from the control part, is patience. Patience that things can't or don't always happen snap of a finger, or how they happen in my mind. So being patient and kind of letting the wave ride, and time will tell, and seeing what happens.
I love that question. Where is my area to grow here? I just think that the emotional maturity just in that question alone, right? Like, this is obviously showing up for me for some reason. What is it inviting me to expand into? My patience.
I don't think it's that surprising that with what you're working with right now, you're dating somebody who is struggling with specifically social media and their boundaries around it. It kind of makes sense. It's like, this is what we do, right? We bring people into our sphere that are going to mirror back to us exactly what it is that we need to really learn and explore about ourselves.
Why does that happen? It's so true though. It's like when you need to learn a lesson, life is like, okay, well, I got it here ready for you, and then you don't learn it, then it comes back again
over and over.
It's like,
why is the universe so perfect? Why is that?
I don't know. It's like setting you up perfectly. Here you go.
Perfect and infuriating.
Here you go again.
All at the same time.
So
yeah. It is. It's honestly kind of beautiful. Like, it's so like confusing, and it's like, what the hell are we doing here? But then it's also beautiful because it's like, who the hell knows? I don't freaking know.
None of us do.
Yeah, exactly. Really.
There's connection in that, right?
Huge. And like, one of my biggest lessons that I learned a few years ago when my father passed away, I was like, where are all the adults? Because I expect like adults to know how to handle these situations and just have it figured out. And that's when I was like, no one has it figured out. Like, I think we're all just trying to figure it out. So also to compassion to everyone, and myself for our hiccups and trying to overcome things. So
absolutely. Elizabeth Lester says we're all just bozos on the bus doing our best day to day to figure this shit out. And it's so real, all of us, none of us know. We're just surviving, keeping our heads above water here.
Yeah. And I think, Alana, like we said, this feels like the perfect package for you to really like lean into a little bit more of the internal, okay, what's coming up for me? The questions around control, the questions around patience, like wanting things to be done a certain way in a certain amount of time. And why is that? Why does that come up? It could be a little bit of inner child work. It could be, why did I need this safety when I was younger? Like, what is it about control that helped me feel safe when I was young? And now how is that translating into being an adult? And where is it actually kind of tripping me up, right? Because what works when we're young is usually what ends up not working so great when we get older. And that's why we start doing this work to begin with. So it just does really feel like a really rich area for you to continue to sit with the resistance that comes up and then the questions that follow.
Yeah. And something too that I've noticed, I did a little case study, because I feel like I'm doing case studies in every area of my life, but I was like, let's try, just like, that's what I said to him, like, communicate to me I would like you to communicate more. So he communicated more like, for example, he told me like, this person followed me, so I followed them back. And I actually was not triggered or activated because I felt like I was in on the story, like I was in the circle. So then I noticed that I don't have this emotional charge when I feel like I'm getting the communication. And I've noticed that I do have this frustration or emotional charge when something was not communicated, because then I feel like I'm kind of left on the side. So I'm kind of even open to him continuing to use it as he pleases, but just communicating things to me. Because I feel like then everything's out there and it's like,
There's
cool.
no secrets.
Yeah. Which I had no emotional charge. And I was like, cool, like, thanks for telling me. That's helpful.
Yeah.
That's nice. I mean, to know.
Mm.
So I think also too, it could be this desire to have a certain level of communication, which I'm definitely seeking and needing.
And it sounds like maybe this person is willing to at least experiment with you in that, right?
Yeah, which is nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much self-awareness, Lana. We're not worried about you. I feel like you're good. Just trust your wisdom. You already have like so much awareness and language with what you're doing. So it's just trust
but
there's
true.
always a but, right? Like there's always going to be a but. It just, we've got to just, like you said, it's like riding the bus, you know, it's like, we got to just go with it and let it continually, it's an onion. There's going to be a layer. We figure it out. There's going to be just another layer. We figure this layer out. There's another layer behind that. Right. So I really appreciate you bringing this though, because I feel like I've been hearing this a lot, and it was just good to hear somebody put words to it in a very articulate way, by the way.
Thank you. But one last thing, the reason why too I thought it would be helpful to talk about this is I feel like when I started feeling these frustrations, I was like Googling like therapist podcast or books, like not a how to handle social media in a relationship, but like just maybe some sort of structure guideline. Like people have like how to's for how to handle like infidelity, for example. And I just always thought social media is maybe so modern, but an area that we aren't really talking about.
Totally.
There was another scenario where like he met someone through me, a woman, and then the next day followed her and established this direct means of communication. And I expressed that this made me feel uncomfortable because I feel like you established a direct means of communication with a woman you met through me. But second, and importantly, I was not aware of it. And that just makes me feel uncomfortable. Because like if you were to ask a woman for her phone number who you met through me, I would expect you to communicate that to me and like why. Maybe it was for work reasons, for this or that. And social media is kind of this norm, but it's actually quite dangerous because you have like an instant download of someone's life, bam, right there. And it just feels like it's a lot of temptation. It could be tricky even for a balanced and sane person. Like I don't want to see like all the men like I've slept with on my thing on a daily basis. It's probably not good for me.
I mean, absolutely. And like, I think that social media ends up being a microcosm of life and, you know, and our work around control and surrender and trust, right? And yes, maybe in the 90s they weren't doing it with like, you know, but at the same time, like we can't be with our partners all day, every day, regardless of whether they're on their phones. And that was always the case, right? So how do I do a little bit of that work of staying with myself and just sort of being curious about like, oof, what is the story I'm telling myself about the fact that he followed her, texted her, whatever the thing was? And, you know, can I do a little of my own internal process around what this brings up over and over, right?
Yeah, you're right. I got some inner journey work to do here.
Right there with you, sister.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, do us a favor and just let us know, you know, keep us posted, let us know how you're doing and what you're working through. And all right, Alana, be well.
All right.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Bye.
If you're ready to be more productive and efficient in your mornings, listen up. Stop wasting time scrolling through endless articles online or getting lost in your email inbox trying to keep up with the day's news. Instead, listen to all the news you need in just about 10 minutes a day with the Newsworthy podcast. Not only are we fast, we also focus on staying fair and factual. So if you want to be informed, not influenced, the Newsworthy is here for you. And because we cover a wide variety of stories, from politics to tech to even entertainment, it's not just the doom and gloom stuff. Never feel uninformed, overwhelmed, or annoyed by the news again. Listen to one of the fastest growing daily news podcasts recommended by the likes of Harper's Bazaar and Podcast Magazine. In fact, Fast Company called the Newsworthy 10 minutes of well-spent listening and said the tone is fair, effortless, friendly, and trustworthy. Simply search for The Newsworthy in your podcast app right now to subscribe and listen for free. Search for The Newsworthy to get fast, fair, fun news of the day with The Newsworthy.
Such a juicy topic, and one that it's impossible to cover in like 25, 30 minutes. But one that I have heard come up a million times. I mean, this is the life that we live in, right?
And I'm so glad she brought this topic in, because I feel like I'm having so many conversations with clients around social media. And I think that, social media is the animal, the beast of this moment. But I think before it was checking people's voicemails, looking at their text messages, whatever way, we've always been attempting to soothe ourselves through the illusion of control in our partnerships. And we've all done it. We've all been there. And it becomes sort of bringing the focus back inward. And I loved in this conversation how you brought in step 2, right? Like, I'm so quick to like, bring it back to yourself, like do your work, take your 100%. And then I think the other part of it is the relational dynamic that you speak to so beautifully, which is, and then you bring your partner into your process, right? Not for them to fix it for you, but so that you're still staying in that space of emotional intimacy.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we learn. That's how we build. That's how we get deeper with each other, right? Is not just going off by ourselves and doing the work and then just thinking that we've done it. It's like, you've got to bring that back to them and bring them in on the ride. Otherwise, there's no growth together, right? Like, you guys start to grow in separate ways and apart versus like growing in parallel. And I think so many times in relationships, that's the step that we miss, is actually bringing them in on the journey. Not that we've already sorted it out, but actually the messiness and like, I don't really know what this means. And like, I'm really struggling with this, and like actually bringing them in on the messy, not the part where it's like got a perfect bow on it and you're presenting back to them your findings, right? Because that's not vulnerability, actually.
Yeah. The avoidant introvert in me shows up and rears her ugly head every once in a while. I'm like, just do your own work, take it to yourself, figure it out. You're like, no, go back.
And see, obviously I'm pretty avoidant. And so my go-to, and the codependency, I mean, a lot of codependents struggle with this thing of like, I'm going to go over here and sort it out and process and do my own thing by myself. And for different reasons, like, oh, I feel like a burden, or I feel like this isn't really about them. Like, this is about me. Like, I need to sort this out for myself. And so, yes. And right. Sometimes, to your point, that can be a defense, like not wanting to actually bring them in on that process can be a way to just defend against that deeper intimacy and being seen in this messy, vulnerable space of like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And can you still love me, even though I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Right. And I think that social media, like you said in the beginning, this is just the surface of it. It's just the thing that's it's just the mirror. It's not what's actually being mirrored back to her, right? I don't know the best analogy for it, but it's not the thing. It's just the surface of the thing.
It becomes the invitation, right? Like, the activation around social media becomes the invitation, first, to get curious about what this is bringing up for me, but then 2, using it as an opportunity to show up vulnerably with our partner and let that person see a little bit of the mess underneath the surface. She's 5 months into a relationship, so they're in that phase where it's like, I'm grappling with allowing him to see these parts of me that are really, really vulnerable to show,
Yeah. And then again, how they kind of respond or how they hold those parts of you is just information for you on what their capabilities and their capacities are.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Cheaper Than Therapy.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
And if you want to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram at Vanessa S. Bennett
and at Danae Logan Selkin.